What's up, guys? In this video I'm going to talk about why I don't like DC, like John Jones says. I don't like DC. I'm going to talk about that. Well, let's just start with some good things here. You know, DC has, of course, all the people have some good qualities and bad qualities. Let's start with DC's good qualities that I appreciate. I think he's a hard-working man and good family man, you could say, whatever. I like his work ethics. You could maybe call that greedy, but I think he works very hard, and you know, he works very hard, and he works at UFC Fox. He works as a commentary for UFC, and he's the light heavyweight champion, soon fighting for heavyweight championship. But okay, let's get into what I don't like about DC. Well, you know, DC appears to me as a bully, you know, and that's why I always call him Daniel Fat Boy Crormier or Daniel Bully Crormier. He's the fat guy in the school when you were a kid, and he would take your stuff and beat your ass and beat all the small kids, and you know, he seems to me like a bullied fat boy, you know. Always make fun of his training partners, coaches, that his that little guy, his coach, his opponents, and he always try to get into their heads during the press conferences and stare downs and stuff like that. And the only guy that he couldn't bully, it was John Jones. You know, when he, on that first stare down, when they touched their head together, and John Jones kicked his ass. So, you know, that's why he hates him so much, because he cannot bully John Jones, and he's the only one that kicked his ass twice. And the first one with a decision, and the second time very convincing, knocked him out cold. And you could argue that, okay, John Jones was cheating, but I said in one of my videos before that I think Daniel Crormier cheated also, maybe not on that fight, but against Anthony Rumble Johnson, you know, in the weigh-ins, you know, put his both hands on the towel. That is a big cheat, man. That is, I don't even know how they can not see that. Maybe they see that and they don't say anything, because he seems like a fucking kiss ass to the UFC. Okay, you know, I believe that when you work somewhere, you have to give your everything. Okay, this is I don't like to the use of the word kiss ass, but you know, UFC is kind of a, you know, it seems like he kissed Dana White's ass so much, and he does everything for money. So I don't like that, you know. Somehow he always gets on that super cards, you know, big money fights. And as Dana White said, all the money fights is with Conor, and all the fighters that are fighting on the same card getting a piece of cake, you know. So somehow he always, okay, he's not maybe been having on the Conor fights, but let's see, UFC 200, one of the biggest cards that UFC can make. He was the main event with John Jones, but I think it's only because of John Jones that he got the first spot. As soon as John Jones was removed from the UFC 200, the main card got replaced by Amanda Nunes, and Misha Tate. Nobody want to see his fat ass because he's boring, man. You know, everybody want to see John Jones fighting, okay? He got Anderson Silva instead. And, you know, he always kisses Dana White's ass. And because of that, Dana White seems like he always is nice to him. As soon as John Jones was removed, he found Anderson Silva for him. A kind of an easy fight with a big name. On the same card, Mousasi was fighting, and he declared his, you know, interest in the fight, and he said, I'm ready to fight this year, I'm ready to go for the light heavyweight championship. And they simply said no, you know, only because, and I'm sure that even if Dana White was giving the choosing option to DC, he would choose Anderson Silva, of course, because he's an easier fight, and you know, bigger name, you could say something like that, you know. And Dana White helped him out with that situation, but what I want to say is that he got the first spot only because of John Jones. Nobody want to see his fat ass. Every time he is on the main card, it's only because of his opponent or some big fights on the co-main event or interesting fights that on the main card. You know, when he's fighting with Anthony Rumble Johnson, the second time it was almost, they couldn't promote that fight. I wouldn't buy that shit. I only bought that fight because of Chris Weidman and Gegard Mousasi. That was one of the biggest fights that I was looking forward to. You know, nobody want to see Daniel Cormier with Anthony Rumble Johnson that lost his motivation, and everybody knew how that fight was going to end, and they couldn't hardly promote that fight. Okay, one other fight, you know, big cards that he, you know, was on. It was the last UFC 220, Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic. Who doesn't want to see that fight? It was one of the most anticipated fights in UFC's history, and I'm sure everybody was tuning in. Everybody wanted to see that fight. And no disrespect to, you know, who want to see Daniel Cormier versus Volkan Ozdemir? The guy is good, but he only has had 3 fights in the UFC, Volkan, I mean. And DC is, okay, he's a you know, he's one of the greatest of all time, but I think he's a very boring fighter. He always wants to, you know, wrestle and put his fat belly on his opponents and suffocates them, and he weighs maybe 300 kilos. Who can remove him? So, I mean, that's what I don't like about DC. You know, I think he's to conclude this video, I'm going to say that I think he's a bully, and I think he's a kiss ass, and I don't like him, man. So fuck him, man.